Hello, everybody. Thank you very much. I would like to start my talk with explaining what I was trying to do when I wrote the title. Does anybody have an idea? It's OK if you don't. OK. So what I wanted to do is that I wanted to pay an homage to a book. And this is a book that a lot of friends and family give women when they are pregnant. And the book is called What to Expect When You're Expecting. So what you have in this book is tips and tricks on how to navigate your pregnancy, and also a timeline of what's going to happen. But the difference with the book, I'm not going to make you wait 9 months to see what's going to happen with the Backend Driven UIs. So let's get started. Even though Sabine already introduced me, I want to do a shorter one. My name is Kate. I am a mobile engineer from Venezuela. And even though my background is a senior iOS developer, right now I'm working as an engineering manager at Clue. But what is Clue? For those of you who don't know, we are a female health app that we want to help people around the world learn to help themselves, help to get their bodies, to know their bodies better. And just a disclaimer for this talk, you're going to see illustrations like this. So I hope it will be at least entertaining, and fun, and educational at the same time. OK, so what's going to be our journey today? First, I would like to talk to you about our reasoning. So why did we decide to go from the classical approach on doing UI into the backend-driven UIs? Then we'll talk about our architectural approach. So how do we decide to tackle this challenge into our existing app? And third, because I like to live on the edge, I'm going to do a live demo. And then fourth, giveaway, spoiler alert. So first, I'm going to talk about the lessons learned and what's next. And now, you pretend that you don't see this. Let's start from the beginning. So let's say you're working at a startup. Most of the times, you follow this process. So you have a product designer that works together with a product owner, and they come up with a new feature that will be shown to the users. So the designer takes his time to design, come up with a concept, and then they deliver the app through something, the design through something like Zeppelin. So once that design is approved and it's planned, the next step is for the developers. So what the developers do most of the time is that they use Xcode. So in Xcode, you can create UIs in different kind of ways. So you can use storyboards, you can use zips, or you can just do it programmatically. So once that you have coded this into your app, then comes the process of acceptance by the POs, tested by QA, design review, and such and such. So once that is ready to be shipped to the users, we submit a build to Apple. So once Apple takes its sweet time and approves this build, this is released to the users. But what happens if we want to make a change? What happens if the color does not match or it's not engaging for the users? And you don't have an A/B testing tool to be able to do these changes. You have to start all over again. And if you're working, again, on an agile methodology kind of company, and you're working with sprints, this whole process takes around 2 weeks. And this is a process that we were having. So most of the times, our product designers and our product owners will look like this. So they ask us to come up with a way, and a fast, iterative way, to be able to deliver UI changes to the user. And that is what we decided to do. So first, let's introduce the backend-driven UIs. The backend-driven UIs is actually not such a new concept. For those of you who remember that time, there was a session in WWDC 2010 that it was called Building a Server-Driven Using Experience. And I'm going to read to you what does this session mean. So in this session, Apple will show how powerful server-side technologies and Cocoa Touch best practices make it easy to remotely update native user interfaces and data structure in deployed mobile applications. So OK, we have the approval of Apple. But this is 2010. Is there anybody out there doing this? And if so, how can we learn from this process, from the process that other companies have done? And this is what I'm going to give a shout out to these companies. So the first company that we heard is Spotify. Spotify came up with their Hub framework, where they will be able, with the backend, render UI components, iOS components in this case. But sadly, this library is now deprecated, or this framework is now deprecated. We also have Airbnb, Zalando, and last but not least, SoundCloud with their hybrid approach. OK. So let's take you to the process of how do we decide to do this. So what you see to the left here is a feature that we call the forecast. So what we're trying to do at Clue, as I said, we want to help people to know their bodies better, is that we provide them insightful information that is related to the symptoms that they have tracked related to their cycles. So for example, if you have tracked that you're sociable or you have a pain, if it's related to your cycle and it's cyclical, we will show you this relevant information in what we call our What's New box. And as you see here, we have what we call the small cards, which can be rendered in different kind of ways. So this one to the left has already a very standard, a title, a text, some buttons, depending on what the user wants to answer. But the designers wanted more. They wanted to be able to create different kinds of templates, card templates in this case. So let's go a little bit to the one on the right. So this is what we call the template of the card. So once we were faced with this, we wanted to think, OK, what is the best way that we can create dynamic UIs and be able to mix and match elements together? So is there any concept that can be like this? Yes, there is. We thought about this as Lego blocks. So in this case, this card that you see right here can be separated into different kind of segments. So in this case, we have spacers, headers, image, text, and a button. So once we defined, OK, we're going to have different kind of segments, we sat together, the Android developers, the backend developers, and iOS developers, to come up with a common language. We wanted to be able to define what are the parameters that the backend should send to us for us to be able to render these visual UIs. Let's take an example with the spacer. So what we do with the spacer is, in this case, we define the type of field that it's going to have. And in this case, it's a required field called size. And in this, we can have possible values such as small, medium, large, and extra large, which will determine the height of the spacer. And each of these values will be, for example, something like 2 pixels, 4 pixels, 6 pixels, and such and such. We added also the notes, because this is a document that is available for anybody in the company. So we wanted them to be able to understand what kind of elements do we have and what are their purpose when we are rendering them. So once they decided for this spacer transforms into something like this, which is the JSON response that the backend will send to us for it to be rendered. OK. So now I talk about our reasoning. What is the next step that I want to talk to you about here? The next step is our architectural approach. So at Clue, we are around 5 years old, so you might imagine how old is our code base. And all of it is mostly in one project, in one app. So we have heard a really good, nice concept on how to structure your architecture, which is the modularization. And this is the first project that we decided, OK, we want to have that approach. We want to have separation of concerns. We want to have each module be able to own a part of this new infrastructure. So we came up with 3 components, or 3 modules, which is the communication module, the logic, and the UI. Let's start with the first one. So the communication model, as its name says, is a bridge between the backend and the app. This communication model is in charge of listening for the changes and in storing the information that we get from the backend into the device for it to be used by the other 2 modules. This module is also in charge of sending back the user interaction to the server. Because when we are delivering cards and you see that we had a button that said yes or no, was it relevant for you, the backend calculates if there's any new relevant information that can be derived by what we have tracked. Then we also have the logic. This logic module knows what to present on the What's New box. So what we have here is a bunch of use cases that is helpful for the app to be able to add cards, remove cards, update them, fetch them, and such. And then we have the UI. Of course, this module knows how to present the cards. This model is in charge of getting the raw information from the response, transform it into a UI that will be ready to display for the user. And this model also captures the user interactions, as I said before, packages them, and sends them back to the communication model for it to be sent to the backend. OK. Now, a little bit of code. How is our parsing and rendering process? As I said, we have a JSON which has several kind of layers. And the best way for me to explain this is with a visual image. So I'm going to use a famous movie that I hope you know, which is Inception. For those of you who don't know Inception, I think the base premises is that Leonardo DiCaprio is trying to be accepted again in the States, and he has to go deeply into the subconscious of, I forgot the name of the guy. But you have several layers. So you have the reality level, you have 3 dream levels, and you end up in the limbo. We're going to do exactly the same here with our parsing. So, our reality level. So when the user tracks a symptom, this information is being sent to the backend. What our backend does is it determines if there is any relevant information related to the symptom that we have tracked. And if it finds it, it packages it into a JSON response that will be sent back to the device. And the way that we are doing this is a very different approach. We're using server-sent events. The server-sent events is like the server allows the client to receive a stream of updates through an HTTP connection without having the need to poll. So the difference between the server-sent event and the WebSocket is that this is just a one-way connection from the backend to the client. And it's easy for example, when you want to update your data without needing all the time to ask the backend, is there anything new? Is there anything new? So once we get our response, as I said, the communication model will store this information into the device. Let's go one level deeper. So the raw information that we get is just data. And to be able to work with that is a little bit cumbersome. So what we do is that we store the raw data into a string into this object called our card response. And this card response has the ID of the card, the type of category, because we have different kind of categories, and each one of them has a different kind of priority on how to be shown to the user, and the JSON, which is a string representation of the data. So what we do with this card response is that we parse it to our presenter. And inside of our presenter, we have our card view model, which conforms to the codable. So what this card view model does is we'll extract the first level, which is the array of segments. But right now, we can't parse the information inside it because this decoder does not know what is inside. And each of one of these segments is a little bit different. So what do we do in this case? We pass that information to the view provider decoder to be able to understand what is underneath. So in the view provider decoder, as I said before, we get the list of segments. But what we have here in this class is this provider types that contains view provider decoders specifically for each and one of these elements. So for example, the header segment view provider will know how to decode the headers, and the text block will know how to decode the text, and such and such and such. So what do we do in this case is we have, let's go to the text block segment view provider. We'll grab the information specifically for the text block segment and send it to the text block segment view model. And in the text block segment view model, as I have here, which also conforms to the decodable, this is the place where we'll get the information on what are the parameters that this segment has. So in this case, for example, we can determine the text, the alignment, the color, the style, and the size. And we also have predefined types, because as I said before, we want to be able to do it in the different kind of 3 platforms. So we already have defined, for example, what is a color for us, what is a style, what is an alignment, and such. So once this view model already has all the information from the JSON, we need to pass that to the text block segment view. And the text block segment view will be configured with the information from the view model. So in this case, we can extract the text, the font, and the text color, and set our label with that information. So at the end, it will look something like this, which is what Clue wishes all you today. OK, so this was a lot, but now let's do a recap. So again, on the reality level, the device receives the JSON response from the server. On the first stream level, we store the data as a string value on the car response to be able to be passed to other classes. One level deeper on the Dream 2, the car view model gets the JSON and extracts the list of segments, but it doesn't know the information that it contains inside. One more, the view provider decoder detects the type of individual segments and passes that information to its correct view provider decoder. And now when we get to the limbo, the view model parses the data, and then, last but not least, the view will be configured with the data from the view model. And hopefully Leonardo DiCaprio will get approved in the States. I didn't see it, OK. So now we're done with our architectural approach. Now it's everybody's favorite time, the demo. Let's do this. OK, so while everything is ready, 1 second. OK. So hopefully it looks OK. I'm ready. OK. So this is our Clue app. And on the right, I have just, oh, no. Well, I'll try to do this fast. OK. Bear with me. I will do it fast. I'm going to show you how fast it is to do this. OK. So we're going to first add a procedure, which will be a spacer. And see, something appeared, right? Just a spacer. But now I want to add more. And just because I don't want to put you into the hassle of looking at me type, because it's a little bit uncomfortable, I will now add a header. And now let's try it again, how that would look like. Aha, hello all. This is starting to look good, but let's get a little bit deeper. So let's close it again. This is going to be like magic. Now I want to add an image. And I have to apologize to UIKonf because I could not find a logo that will be able to show in a good way. Thank you very much. Thanks to Engine, who's helping me here while I code. Not pay attention to that. And Engine has saved the day. Please, a round of applause for him. OK, so now let's add an image, which will be the UIKonf logo. So now you have a logo. But wait, there's more. OK, we're going to add just a title, because I really like when people are having fun in the UIKonf. So save it. Of course, this has happened. At least you're entertained. OK, so. Oh, no. Thank you. This is why. Thank you very much. Now let's try again. Debugging in real life. Not a pressure. And last but not least, let's just going to add a button, because I wanted to confirm that I'm having fun here at UIKonf. Hopefully I'm copying the right thing. Yes. So if somebody sees an extra comma, please let me know. No? Let's try this. Let's try this. No pressure, no pressure. Yes. OK. Now, Can I have the other slide while I go back to the slides? Please. Thank you. OK. Now that we finished our demo, and it was very entertaining and very interactive, now we're going to know more about the lessons that we learned. So what were our learnings? First of all, we did it. And the second is that we have an easy-to-maintain system that can be defined by design. So we already have elements, predefined elements, such as spacers, text, headers, images, and such. But if, for example, we wanted to add a toggle, it's very easy for design to be able to create this new segment and for us to add the code to be able to be rendered in the specific way. We also learned about this multi-platform. So we were designing and coming up with this approach. We wanted to make sure that every single card that we're doing is to render in the best way and in the most native way for Android and iOS. This is, again, independent of the release cycle process. For example, if we see that a card is not performing very well or we want to change colors, the designers do not need to wait for Apple to approve these new changes. We can just change the template on the back end and just send it back to the clients. And last but not least, we don't need to reuse code. There's no need for us to reuse code for the UI views. So for example, if we just had this small template, as I showed you in the beginning, which is just text and 2 buttons, but we wanted to create a different kind of template, we're not copying and pasting that code in every single module that we needed. So what are the next steps for us? The next step for us, the sky's the limit, full screen templates. Right now, as you see, we just have a card. But we want to have more. We want to be able to have a modal view that it will show a user in a full screen what the template can be done. We also want to incorporate more animations. Right now, the cards just appear. But we want to have the user to have a delightful experience of having to interact with the cards in a kind of different way. And we also want to add additional content types. Right now, we are just supporting images, but we're thinking about supporting videos, supporting GIFs, or anything that, again, is delightful for the user to be able to know about their experience. So this was the journey that I took you today. If you have any questions, I prefer conversations much more one-on-one, so please find me afterwards. I will be here after the talk, and I will also be at the party. And what I want to say is thank you very much for listening to me today.